Hey, deserving listeners, let's watch the trial. Let's do it.
Also a very kind, patient, loving, gentle man. And our mom was the opposite. She was very high-strung, very nervous, anxiety, angry.
All right, so we're learning from Johnny Depp's older sister. She's 2 years older than him. We're learning that there were 4 kids in the family, and they were the 2 youngest, and they had 2 older siblings that were a lot older. We're also learning from her the father was very nice and accommodating, and the mom was abusive and anxious and emotionally erratic. We also heard from her that Johnny Depp as a kid was kind of a clown, kind of a prankster, very caring and warm and fun as a kid.
So they were completely opposite people.
Did your mother, Betty, ever get angry with your father?
Yes.
How would your mother express her anger toward your father?
She would scream, she would yell at him, she would hit him.
It's interesting. I think it's tangentially related to this case. I mean, the jury is there to decide whether or not Amber Heard is guilty of defamation, whether she essentially lied and harmed his career. And by the way, I didn't react to all the other opening statements because I felt like it was like an introductory paragraph. And I was like, well, I don't know. We'll wait until the evidence comes out. It seems like there's going to be a lot of evidence that they're going to go over. And I will say that in summary of Amber Heard team's lawyers, the lawyer was saying to the jury, you're not here to decide upon who was the bad guy, who was the abusive one. You're here to decide on the First Amendment, on freedom of speech, that Amber Heard, in her statement that she made to the Washington Post, has every right to have said what she said, and there's nothing wrong with what she said. They actually read the entire statement, the entire piece, which I think I remember reading in the past, but it's not a lot about Johnny Depp. But you could argue that the most salacious detail in there, which isn't elaborately discussed, is the implication, the very obvious implication that Johnny Depp is abusive. I don't know. When I hear that, I'm like, well, the First Amendment, yeah, I mean, every freedom of speech, it's important, but you don't have the right to lie about someone and ruin their career. But they actually laid out a lot of details that they're going to demonstrate over time with witness testimony, that Johnny Depp had a huge problem with alcohol and drugs, and that he was indeed abusive, that he was verbally abusive. There's texts, apparently. It sounded interesting and it sounded compelling, honestly. Now, maybe they'll get to their point here, that what they're trying to say is that it's a recreation, this relationship between their parents, where the father was very accommodating, the mother was very abusive and angry, that Johnny Depp recreated that relationship with Amber. But we all understand that he could have easily recreated the relationship in multiple ways, including identifying with the abuser. That's one of the damaging effects of witnessing violence or being a victim of violence, is that you're somewhat more likely to engage in violence and abuse later on, even though you know how horrible it feels to have gone through that, because of the defenses that have to be used in order to cope with the abuse as a child. One defense, for example, is you feel very powerless. You're 10 years old and you're watching your parents engage in violence, or they're abusing you or your sibling, and you feel powerless. Think of the way Will Smith talked about what he went through, watching his dad abuse his mom, and how as a kid he thought he was a coward. It's this impotent feeling that children will go through. And since kids don't have the ability to logic their way through it, they'll conclude it's all their fault. I'm powerless. I was a coward. I should have stood up. I know if I was a better kid, this never would have happened. Like, kids will come to those conclusions because they don't know better, and they're also fairly self-centered in the way they narrativize the world. A defense is, I will overcompensate for my lack of power by becoming powerful, because I frequently feel powerless, so I'm going to try to adopt a powerful persona. And who's powerful in my life that I can use as a role model? Well, the abusive parent. So I will become like them. I will act like them. I will think like them. And I will perhaps abuse my siblings, or I might even abuse the victim parent. And then as an adult, I continue to engage in that because it's become a pattern. So the fact that he went through abuse as a child, I don't know, at least for me in terms of my understanding. Now, it's all about the jury, right? So if the jury is provoked to sympathy, if the jury is provoked to think, oh, it's the same, so therefore it must be the same, like it's not a logical connection, right?
Call him names, that kind of thing.
Did your father ever hit your mother back?
No, Dad never reacted.
Now, I should mention another defense is to internalize through projective identification, and I don't have time to go into it because I don't want to go into it now. But the idea is that you internalize a relationship and you recreate it. You might even find someone that agrees with one side of the relationship. You say you were abused, so you have the abuser and the abusee, and you internalize that whole thing, the dyad, the abusee. You internalize a version of yourself because you're observing the self and you're observing the other and everything that's associated with it, and it becomes an internalization. Then later on in life, you recreate it through projective identification where you identify with one side or the other. You might identify with the victim and you might find someone who abuses you, or you might identify with the abuser and find someone who is easily victimized. That's another defense.
Did you book your brother's hotel accommodations during the 14 years when he was with Vanessa Paradis?
Yes.
Did you ever book an extra room when he was with her?
Objection leading.
No.
Overall, allow that one. Go ahead.
Okay, so there was a lot of fluff that I didn't react to. Yet I'm reminded of my time spent in courtrooms. In my early career, I don't know, maybe once a week, I would spend time in a courtroom, and I realized early in my life that real courtrooms are nothing like they depict them in the movies and TV shows. They are boring affairs. Every once in a while, something interesting will happen, but it's just like, so. And so I'm just reminded of sitting there and just going, but getting paid. So, what are you going to do? But Johnny Depp's sister, talked about how the dad would escape the mom when the mom was abusive. She also talked about how her and Johnny Depp would escape the mom by going into their room. And she's been very close to Johnny Depp because she essentially is his business manager. And with Vanessa, was it Vanessa Paradis? By the way, I remember when one of her albums came out 20 years ago. I remember I really liked it. It was produced by Lenny Kravitz. Anyway, Johnny Depp was married to her, and during that time, the sister never had to book a second room the way that she did when Johnny Depp was with Amber Heard, because with Amber Heard, the sister knew that Johnny Depp would want to escape, and he needed to have that option. The sister didn't ever, the 14 years that she made the travel arrangements for Johnny Depp and Vanessa Paradis, she never booked another room, but with Amber Heard, it was all, frequently the case. What does that say? Well, it paints a picture for sure. By the way, I don't think I've emphasized another possible conclusion. I'm trying to figure out, where am I going to land at the end? Am I going to be confused? Am I going to think one is guilty, the other one's not? But another conclusion that I've come to in cases like this is that they both were abusers and both were victims. Maybe there's like a 60-40 situation, but that can happen, and it does sometimes. Those situations are really hard to sift through because you're thinking, am I just blaming the victim by labeling them as a occasional abuser and they're both to blame? Because certainly that can happen, right? You can have two people vying for power, two people that were raised in abusive households. And by the way, in the opening statement, they talked about how Amber Heard actually wrote in that piece for Washington Post that she went through some very, very difficult abuse in her childhood, physically, sexually, verbally, I think. One scenario that you can have is that you have two people that come from abuse. They both will alternate between victim and abuser, and both are abusing each other and both are victims of each other. Well, what do you do in a situation like that regarding crime? Who's to blame? It gets messy. And again, we want to really make sure, if we're going to come to that conclusion, we want to really make sure that we have a lot of data to back that up, because if we're identifying definite abuse that's happening and we make the mistake by blaming the victim because they occasionally will defend themselves, then that would be a travesty of justice and horrible, right?
Did you ever hear your brother and Miss Heard argue?
No.
Did you ever see or hear any physical altercation between your brother and Miss Heard?
No.
the lawyer just asked the sister, did you ever see any arguments or see any violence? And the sister said no. What does that tell us? Well, I don't know.
When I saw them, to me, he was always trying to make her happy.
Okay, but we're probably going to hear a similar account from Amber's people, that Amber was always trying to make Johnny Depp happy or something. I don't know if we're going to see that, but we just have to take her word with a grain of salt. Not that she's lying, but that she would be biased because she loves her brother. She might not have ever liked Amber Heard. I don't know. But according to her, observing them together, he was frequently trying to please her. Okay.
He always made effort to sort of make her happy. I think she has a very strong personality, and my brother's personality came off much more soft at that point to me.
Did you observe any occasions in which Ms. Heard was nice to your brother?
Yes, I've seen her be nice to him.
Have you witnessed any occasions on which Ms. Heard wasn't nice to your brother?
I have, actually. On one occasion, because this one really stayed with me. I was at the office and I'd had a meeting. Amber had come in and asked if she was interrupting us, and we said no. And Johnny told Amber that I had just had a meeting with Dior and that, they were interested in him. Her reaction to that was she was in disbelief and sort of disgust because she said, Dior, why would Dior want to do business with you? They're about class and they're about style, and you don't have style. So it was the insulting kind of taking away that one moment.
Interesting. It doesn't mean that she loses the case, but so far the sister seems quite believable. There were a lot of opportunities for her to spin things in a particular way or to have signs of spinning, and there didn't seem to have that. But she is saying that they met with Dior. Is that a perfume cologne thingy? They asked, if Johnny Depp would want to be a spokesperson for them, and when Amber Heard found out, she said, but Dior's about fashion and you're not fashionable. And who knows how she meant it, who knows what really happened, who knows if it happened. But if it did happen, it does add to the picture of Amber Heard being mean, having a tendency to be hurtful, to have a hurtful impulse. Because if that happened, right, if your partner did that to you, particularly if it doesn't make any sense, right? Because I don't know about y'all, but I find Johnny Depp, in terms of his public image, to be, I don't know if it's like super fashionable, but he's not a schlub. He's not like me in these shirts, like his hair and all of his accoutrement and the scarves and the sunglasses and the hats and the tattoos. And to say to him, you? And, he's arguably one of the biggest stars in the world. So why would it be so strange? But given the hypothesis that Dr. Curry was putting, or the diagnoses that she was putting forward and the conceptualization of Amber Heard's personality that she was putting forward, how would that fit in that? It would be possibly the histrionic in that, well, Johnny Depp is getting attention and thus I'm not getting attention. And I don't know. This is all, I'm just trying to speculate, just trying to piece things together. I could be completely off base this whole time, but using it as a jumping off point, not all histrionic people, but some, even when they're quite young, and that's usually where it begins, that they will feel in a constant state of a lack of attention. And remember, as I've said in earlier videos, they were abused essentially or mistreated in a way that involved a lack of attention, and they concluded that if they can constantly try to garner attention, they'll get a little bit more attunement and thus feel safe and worthy. Because all kids need to feel safe and worthy and attuned to and noticed and understood and held and more. And when you don't have enough of that, then you have to amp up your signals to get attention by being louder or having a more expressive face or lying or having bigger emotions or, crying wolf, for example. Then that becomes an automatic habit neurologically, and you're 35 and you operate from that place. We're in reality at 2, but it's no longer longer true, that you're in a constant state of danger of being abandoned. And the only way to stave off abandonment and terror and annihilation is to constantly be trying to get attention. And if you had a sibling or someone that kind of locked in this sort of ancillary part of the schema, that if anyone else gets attention, that means I'm not going to get attention. So if anyone else gets attention, that's a threat, and I have to shut that down. And so I got to get out in front of that. And if Johnny Depp gets this attention, I'm not getting attention. And now on the surface, you would say, well, what a jerk face. Why would you be jealous of that? Why would you get upset? Well, that's not exactly what's happening. That's the way it looks. And there is an element of that. But on the inside, it's utter terror for the histrionic person. For someone else to get attention, it's totally illogical, of course. It made sense when they were younger, probably. But someone else is getting attention and they fall through the floor with their anxiety. It's just, oh no, I'm going to be left alone. And it's an unnamed fear that these people have. When I work with them, it takes a long time to get in touch with that and to understand it. And it feels very real. And then you'll do anything to get out of that feeling, including either getting the attention from the other person, like calling Dior and saying, you don't want to be with Johnny, you want to be with me, or stopping it at the recipient and saying like, well, you're not worth it. And then the person will shrink away and then they don't get the attention and then you get it.
You know, that insult is there. You know, I've seen the insults multiple times, actually.
What, if anything, did you hear Ms. Heard say about Mr. Depp's physical appearance?
She called him an old fat man.
Interesting. So she's saying on multiple occasions, Amber Heard was insulting and mean. There's this one time that she remembers when she called Johnny Depp an old fat man. So this is all kind of in that category. And by the way, I'm speculating a lot about Amber Heard's personality, primarily because at least I don't know if it's happened yet. I'm sure I'll get to it if I'm going to wade my way through every single second of this trial. No forensic psychologist has evaluated Johnny Depp and talked about it in the hearing. As far as I'm guessing that'll happen eventually, right? Because if you're going to do that to Amber Heard, I mean, I'm expecting there to be four forensic psychologists, one for the Johnny Depp team for Amber, and one for the Johnny Depp team for Johnny, and one for the Amber Heard team for Amber, and one for the Amber Heard team for Johnny. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that would make sense, right? Unless you believed that you couldn't find any forensic psychologist. You know, there's a small chance that the Amber Heard legal team believes that, well, there's no forensic psychologist that will not find condemning personality traits in Amber Heard, so we'll let Johnny Depp's team have one and we'll just try to refute it, but we're not going to get our own forensic psychologist. You know, obviously that can happen sometimes, but anyway, I'm looking forward to that because then if there are conceptualizations on the table, I'll have a richer conceptualization of why Johnny Depp would have done it. I mean, we've heard about the abuse that he went through, so there are conceptualizations there, but they're not very hard to understand. So why would someone be insulting and mean frequently like that? Well, it could be like the histrionic, like I said, as a learned way when you're young, as a way of trying to keep someone down so that you get attention. You know, you could imagine that happening. You have a younger sister and maybe they're the cute one and they get the attention again, this is normal really for all siblings to do this, to try to get in front of that kid and get more attention because you want to be the cute one, you want to be the loved one, and you might even put that kid down, that younger sibling down, so that they slink away and then you're there, the only one left to get the attention. Now, if you have trauma around that, then you're going to times that times 100 and it's going to be a lot worse and more vindictive and more horrible, right? And then that becomes locked in and then that's just a pattern that you engage in because all the assumptions are there later on, and you might actually just be in a constant berating of Johnny Depp because you irrationally believe that there's a finite amount of attention in the world, and if he's getting attention or believes in himself, then you want to put that down. Another more common conceptualization that I'll come to is that Amber Heard was verbally abused growing up, and she was put down, and she was told that, or at least shown through behavior, through abuse perhaps, that she doesn't matter and that she's a piece of crap. That becomes internalized. As I've said before, there are various different ways of dealing with that once it becomes internalized. You essentially start believing that you are a piece of crap. You're positive that you're worthless. There's something deeply wrong with you. you'll never amount to anything, and you have to constantly trick everyone into believing that you're not a piece of crap, and you could never really reveal who the real you is, because everyone will know what a piece of crap you are. And by the way, if you suffer from this schema and it sounds familiar to you, it's an excellent thing to address in therapy, because it's not true. I've never met a person that believed that there was something deeply flawed about them and concluded that there actually was something even remotely deeply flawed for them. It's a belief that was based on how you were being treated as a child, and it's a tragic adult manifestation of the abuse that you went through, and completely unfair, and it's the abuse that keeps on giving, if you know what I'm saying. So you are being abused verbally. In schema therapy, you have 3 different ways of coping with it. You can either surrender, avoid, or overcompensate. And to surrender to that is to just say, yeah, I'm a piece of crap, and I'm just going to live a life that incurs a lot of people thinking I'm a piece of crap, because I am a piece of crap. It's self-sabotage in a nutshell. And avoidance is, I'm going to avoid anything that will, draw questions around me being a piece of crap or not. So I might avoid relationships. I might get a very easy job. I might avoid talking. There's an avoidance of just like, I just don't even want the question. I don't want the question to even be raised. The overcompensate defense is to overcompensate by getting out ahead of it. You might always try to be perfect. You might insult other people. By comparison, if someone else is a piece of crap, then you're not a piece of crap. So that is a possible conceptualization that we might build data for as we move forward.
How did he respond?
I believe he's heard her call him that himself.
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.